Okay, what I'm going to talk about is the future of the newspaper. Of course, many of you will ask, does the newspaper really have a future? And that's something that's been troubling me and everybody else who works in the news industry for a very, very long time, because the reality is our readership is declining. Now, I say declining, another word might be dying. We're witnessing a revolution that hasn't been seen since the printing press was first invented. But unlike the printing press, everything that we've seen in the last 15 years has seen information develop at such a pace. It's all been done in 15 years. The Gutenberg press took maybe 150 years. I started working on the Irish Times website in 1996. That's me looking tired working on the site. Even then I looked concerned about what the future of the business was. The reality was that we hadn't got a clue what we were doing back in 1996, as I think is evidence from this homepage back from when I started working on the website. It was useless. It was all over the place. We hadn't a clue. But yet there was this sense amongst the people I worked with that we were pioneers and that we were doing something really important. And ultimately we were going to be enormously wealthy and would end up owning one of these. Because that was the whole notion of the dot-com madness of the late 1990s. Everything was possible. Websites were selling for tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, and we were going to be super, super, super rich. Then the bubble burst in 1999, 2000, and suddenly you could not read the phrase Irish Times website without reading the phrase hemorrhaging money immediately afterwards. We suddenly became pariahs within our own newspaper. Everyone was looking at us going, what are they doing? They're losing money. So what we did was we introduced a subscription model. As you can imagine, that went down really well with our readers. Everyone hated us. We were savaged and savaged and savaged for a very, very long time. But we kept at it because we had to make money. We had to generate some kind of revenue. So we withstood all the flack. And then in 2008, when everything looked better, we decided, hey, we're going to come out from beyond the subscription paywall and we're going to start giving away our content again for free, because what could possibly go wrong? The economy is booming, everything is fine, we're going to make all our money from advertising just like we thought we would in the past. Then this happened. I could just as easily put up a slide of Anglo-Irish Bank, but I thought I'd be more global in my outlook. The second .com, or the second bubble burst, and once again we were completely screwed, and everybody started looking for ways that we could cut corners. So we're in the middle of that position now. One of the great strengths that newspapers had was there was this huge barrier to entry. If you wanted to run a newspaper, you had to buy a printing press. You had to invest in significant amounts of journalists. You had to buy paper, for God's sake. The whole world has changed now with, of course, the development of blogging and citizen journalists. And, of course, we all know that we're all journalists now. Now, the reality is that blogs have completely changed. Blogs, Twitter, whatever it might be, has completely changed the landscape for newspapers. An awful lot of newspapers are really struggling to come to terms with that. So they're behaving in much the same way that King Canute did. They're trying to hold back the tide. They're trying to say, the world is as it always was. It's never going to change. These people, these bloggers, people using Twitter, they're all going to go away. The reality is they're not going to go away. And until newspapers recognise that, we're screwed. Back to advertising. This was the thing that was supposed to save us. Imagine the advertising agencies lied to us. Who would have thought it? It turns out that advertising is never, ever, ever, ever going to generate enough revenue to keep a newspaper afloat. It doesn't matter if you're the New York Times, the Washington Post, or the Irish Times. So where is the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow? Where do we make it? How do we make a living? Because there seems to be this enormous reluctance amongst the general public to actually pay for the content that they're getting. Now, so that provides us as a newspaper with a huge problem. If we can't pay our journalists, what do? We look to this man, the most unlikely saviour of the newspaper industry I can imagine. It is, of course, Rupert Murdoch. He's in the process of putting all his News International titles behind a paywall. He's introducing a subscription model in the next couple of weeks. That may be the solution to our problems. We may have to start charging. The New York Times has adopted a different approach. It's adopted a metered approach. It gives you the first little bit free, then you start paying for it. The other thing, and other newspapers have a thing called freemium, whereby some of the content is given away for nothing, the rest of the content you have to pay for. What we're all really looking for is the killer app, the one thing that will solve the newspaper industry's problems. We've been looking for it for 15 years. Is it the email digest? Is it breaking news, SMSs? No, it's none of those things. Turns out that the killer app may well be the app, because this is the one thing that has transformed the media in the last 12 months. People have suddenly become accustomed to paying for news. It seems like a revolutionary concept to most of us, but they're willing to buy apps from The Guardian, from the New York Times, whatever newspaper, and from the Irish Times, which is, incidentally, this quick plug, we launched our own app last Monday. It's only $1.59, great value for money. But what we want is people to appreciate that newspapers provide a service that we would be lost as a people without. But to do that, we need to charge for it. The bottom line is, of course, if you expect me to tell you what the future of the newspaper industry is, I haven't got a clue. Nobody has a clue. So we'll just all have to soldier on and hope we muddle through the next 18 months.